Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting The Vault at 201 North Broadway.
Big Sky Economic Development is the community's economic development organization. BSED's mission is to sustain and grow our region's vibrant economy and outstanding quality of life by providing leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, workforce development, and community development. Learn more and connect with BSED at bigsky.economicdevelopment.org.
The reason that philanthropy fit for me was it's always been important to me that it can't just be a job, right? It has to be something where at the end of my career, I'm going to be able to look back and say, hey, I helped the world move forward in some way. Think of what can we do next to better serve this community.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
It's Mars B.
And Kavo.
And this is The Vault at 201 North Broadway.
A business podcast
where we bring you entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders of Montana.
You don't want to miss this.
Learn how to better start, manage, and grow your business.
And your leadership style.
Tangible takeaways to save you time and improve whatever it is that you're working on.
You're listening to The Vault.
Joining us today on The Vault is Tyler Wiltgen with Intermountain Health and the St. Vincent Healthcare Foundation, and he's a Big Sky Economic Development board member.
One of my favorite things that I get to do.
Yeah, thanks. We're glad to have you on our board. I think we have a really cool board, so.
It is,
we're lucky.
You're absolutely right. I think I didn't realize what a valuable thing it would be for me personally to be on that board. The connections, what I'm learning, it's a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of heavy hitters, so that's like fun to interact with all of you. But we can talk more about the board in a little bit. So welcome to our Vault. We're excited to have you. We like to start each episode just learning about our guest and for our audience to learn a little bit about the background of how they got to where they are. So let's dive into where you grew up. What was that like? Because you're from Montana.
I am. And before I start into that, I just want to thank you. Big fan of the podcast. I've learned a lot listening to it. Yeah, you and I actually kind of share a similar story. We come from real small towns. So I grew up in Wilsall, Montana, population 235, I think, by last count. It's about 30 miles north of Livingston. So great place to grow up, farming and ranching community. It's one of those things where you had to do every activity in high school just so that everybody would have the numbers needed for the teams and everything. But yeah, grew up on that ranch, grew up working there, but my mom was a nurse. My dad was an electrician. So we also had small business, healthcare, lots going on in our lives. Great way to grow up.
And remind me, did you have siblings?
I do. I have two sisters. So one older, one younger.
Middle child,
which, that's probably a podcast of its own right there.
I can't relate. I'm an oldest, so.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
No, but it's great. I've got wonderful sisters and, I married into a family of only girls. So, it's been a special part of my life. I enjoy that.
Yeah, that is fun. So what were some of the things, where'd you go? Because you went to MSU after. Was that like, I'm always going to MSU, or was it the programming that MSU offered? What led you to go to MSU?
Yeah, great question. So when I was in high school, I got very involved with FFA, Future Farmers of America. It did so much for me. I learned how to sell products. I learned how to run meetings through parliamentary procedures. I learned how to do public speaking. It was a wonderful opportunity for me. And then I was elected as a state FFA officer, which you actually serve after high school in your freshman year of college. And so they encouraged us to go to MSU just so it would be easier for the team. So I never really looked anywhere else, and I went to MSU, but I absolutely loved it. Of course, it wasn't too far from where I grew up, so I could stay involved in the ranch and some other things going on. And a wonderful experience for me that took me all over the world, literally. So I wouldn't change it for anything.
The FFA did.
Yeah, FFA, and then just my experience at MSU.
So tell us about what you did at MSU.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued on the all over the world.
So when I was at MSU, because of my FFA experience, I thought I wanted to be an agriculture teacher. I got done though with FFA, my FFA state officer year, and started getting more involved in campus life, and quickly realized that I loved agriculture, but I loved the business aspect of it. So agribusiness is kind of what I trended toward. Eventually, got a minor in agribusiness and got my master's degree in economics. So I just love the business world and how agriculture plays into that. when I was a sophomore at MSU, I actually did a study abroad year in Russia.
Oh, wow.
Spent 6 months over there at the Moscow Agro-Engineering University, which was a wonderful experience, and then ended up going back over and doing an internship when I was in my master's program.
Wow.
So I got to spend almost a year there total over 2 different stints in Moscow and learned so much and really opened up my eyes to the way, we need to factor in the entire world as we're making large decisions, not being very myopic in our thinking.
So did you speak Russian?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I still do just a little bit. I just
Cool.
don't have much opportunity to practice it anymore.
We should connect you with Patrick Daly. We had him on, and he, like the dailies of Chicago, like the mayor
wow.
dailies.
Okay.
Yeah, the Sun. And he spent time in Russia too and speaks fluent Russian, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he said a little something on the podcast. Obviously, I don't speak Russian, so I wish I could have translated what he said. But
Yeah.
That was cool.
Чуть-чуть говорю по-русски.
okay,
So I
small.
know just a little bit.
Just a little to be dangerous. So
That's
what
right.
were some things from that experience? I think that traveling just teaches us so much, but being immersed in that culture for a year in total, what are things that stick out to you in your memory of that experience?
Well, number one, it's that, you go completely to the other side of the planet, yet people are not really that different. When it comes down to things, families still matter to people, shared experiences really matter to people, culture matters to people. And so once you can kind of understand that about people, you can get along with anybody, right? And I think especially right now with the way the geopolitics of the world are with Russia, the United States and everything going on, I think Russia's kind of been in a bad light for a while with us, but you get beyond Vladimir Putin and some of their leadership, and we really have a lot in common with those folks. And so I've been able to kind of stay in touch with them over the years, and that's been a neat opportunity for me. I also think it opened up my eyes, specifically my internship, to the role that America plays in the world. My internship specifically was helping American farmers and ranchers get their products into Russia, so dealing with exports. And, the relationships that are involved in that and the trade policy, all of it, it really is a pretty remarkable thing that we're doing each and every day in agriculture, getting our products overseas.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's wow, mind blowing. That's really a cool experience. So you did that in undergrad as a sophomore and then continued on through MSU. Were there any other experiences there before you went into your master's program that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. So I think, when I was doing my undergraduate degree, getting plugged in was very important to me, right? I've always just been one of those people that I have to stay very, very busy. So,
And you come from a small town, right? Like
Right.
everyone's involved in everything. That's
right.
normal.
Yeah. If you're not involved in everything, something's wrong with you. So, so I did lots, I was on radio for a while. I refereed basketball.
Tell us about those, the radio, basketball.
Yeah. So that actually started when I was in high school. We had a school to work program when I was a senior where they would actually bus us into Livingston.
Okay.
And we got to sign up with an employer to do whatever job we wanted to just explore careers. And so I was teasing my mom and told her I wanted to be a radio DJ. And she didn't think very highly of that, but I carried through with it. I'm like, I'm going to try it. So I went and worked at a radio station a day a week. And it was just a neat experience. And so by the end of the year that I was there, I was going to the courthouse and getting the court news for the day. And then I'd come back and report it on the radio. They gave me an hour in the afternoon where I got to host and choose the music. It was a country station,
Wow.
KPRK in Livingston.
As a high schooler.
As a high schooler.
Okay.
So I had an hour to kind of pick the music and be the DJ and whatnot. And I'll never forget, they did a 6-minute interview at the bottom of every hour in the afternoon. And so I would play all the music. I'd turn it over to their news guy who did the interview, and then I'd get it back for the rest of the hour. And the last song I played before that news block was Goodbye Earl by the Dixie Chicks,
Yes,
if you know
yes.
that one. And
Of course, that's like a childhood staple. Yeah.
right, we grew up on that.
Yep.
And so I'm leaving the studio to go get a glass of water or something, and the interview's coming in. And it turns out it was the director of the local Battered Women's Network.
Oh.
And she's like, "We love that song." So I'm like, "Oh boy!" But luckily, I didn't get fired over that.
That's funny. Everyone knows that song.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Oh yeah. They were such a classic.
yeah. Well, for anybody who's not into the Dixie Chicks, it's a song about a lady who kills her husband and puts him in the back of the car.
Goodbye, Earl.
Goodbye, Earl.
Yep. So did you enjoy being on the radio?
I did. I really enjoyed that. So then I kind of parlayed that into sports broadcasting and did that, for a while, both in high school and in college. And then eventually when I graduated, they asked me back to be the voice of the Bobcat women's basketball team for a couple of years. Wow. And then I eventually became the voice of the Bobcats football and men's basketball team. Did that until we moved to Billings, 8 years ago. And just absolutely loved it. I've always kind of just had this, I guess, just the way I'm wired of if an opportunity presents itself and there's not a good reason to say no, you should just try it and do it. And I think it's served me well because I've got all these kind of random experiences that don't really connect to each other. But, it's allowed me to see a lot, do a lot, meet a lot of really cool people. And, I just feel like it's a fun way to go through life.
So what was it like to be it's like kind of I remember the ones that were like, I'm trying to remember the guy that was always reporting like Class C sports tournaments, but his name will come. Erickson? No. It'll come to me.
Rocky Erickson.
Yes. He was like a staple of like, sports in Montana. But what was it like what was your day prepping for something like that and then hosting throughout because it's in real time? Like, how do you learn how to do that?
I like to watch sports. I think it came from just watching and listening to what the announcer said more than anything. I never did get formal training for it. But, growing up in a small town, I remember when I was young and the Rebels, the Shields Valley Rebels, my high school, were in a state tournament and you'd go try to find them on the radio station and it was super fuzzy and you'd listen and you were just so locked into every single move, hoping they'd win that game. And I just loved it. It was like so dramatic, it was such great entertainment. And so then when I started doing it, it's like, it's so cool to be the person that gets to do that. Right. And then you kind of learn about how to do it and that, sometimes less is more. You don't want to be talking the whole time. You want to make sure that they can hear the crowd on a great play, or you can, when you're doing interviews is to ask really thoughtful questions so that you get really thoughtful answers. And so you learn those little tricks and how to make it a better broadcast overall. And, it just became such a thrill to be part of those big games and whatnot.
Because you did football, which is huge for Bozeman.
Yes.
And the state, obviously, like Cat Grizz, that's a huge, huge thing. The rivalry of that.
Yeah, and
that has to be like pretty thrilling.
Oh, it was huge. And I grew up in a time when the Bobcats never won in that rivalry. I remember I was a freshman in college when we broke the streak of 16 years of losing to the Grizzlies. So,
whoa, Bobcats,
it's
whoa.
Like, man, you kind of got used to losing. So then when we started winning, it was pretty fun. And I remember my first Cat Grizz game was actually doing football radio was in Missoula. And this was during the Denarius McGee era for all those Bobcat fans listening to this podcast. But the Bobcats won. I think it was 16-9 was the final score. And it was so, trying to just contain your own emotions over something like that as a fan was pretty hard to do that afternoon.
Wow.
But, it's fun because you'll still, every now and then you'll see clips of the Bobcat games from years ago and I'll hear my voice, over one of those clips. And that's pretty cool to think, okay, just a very small part of it, but it was such a neat run for me.
But how fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so were you doing that the whole time, full time? Because you said until about 8 years ago. So what else were you doing while you lived in Bozeman?
The thing about radio is it doesn't pay very well. So I needed a day job. And so I'd graduated from my master's program, had moved to Helena, and I was actually working in the state government up there as an economist, and got a call out of the blue one afternoon, and they said, we need a women's basketball announcer. The previous guy just quit and the season starts in 2 weeks. And I'm like, sure, I'll do it. So then I was commuting back and forth from Helena for 2 years.
Wow.
Doing those games, and then decided, my life would be a lot easier if I moved to Bozeman. So I started looking on the university website for jobs, and there was a fundraiser job in the College of Agriculture at the time. So I applied for that and got it. And then, so I kind of had this dual career that started then, working in the MSU Foundation, helping to raise funds for the university, and did that for about 10 years before we moved down here to Billings. So
you were doing radio, and then you worked as an economist, and then you went into philanthropy.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, it was quite a transition. I'd done a little bit of it just on a volunteer basis, through my FFA experience and whatnot with fundraising. So it wasn't a total foreign subject to me, but I thought, I had gone and I'd been an economist. I really enjoyed that. We were doing research for the Department of Labor up there in Helena. Really enjoyed it, but there wasn't enough people time, right? It was so much just data crunching and time behind a computer looking at spreadsheets and whatnot. Loved it. It scratched an itch for me for sure, but it wasn't going to be fulfilling, I could tell. And so then I started doing the radio and I started doing fundraising with the MSU Foundation, and I loved it because it allowed me to be out with people, talking about very important ideas, trying to align passion with the needs of the university. And I just settled into that, enjoyed it, and found meaning in it. And I think that, because so far as we've talked about my career arc, it's kind of all over the place. And so I think that was kind of the moment where I locked in and said, this is what I need to be doing with my time, right?
And
this is how I can really give back.
Yeah, and you grew in that role, right? Like that, you had that job, but then it sort of progressed, right, during your time at MSU, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep. So I spent 10 years there total, and about every 2 years I was promoted into a different position and got to work on some great projects. Like I came in at the very tail end of the fundraising for the Animal Bioscience building, which was built in 2009. Was involved in actually met my wife doing the fundraising for the end zone when they expanded Bobcat Stadium. So I got to lead that project, which was a lot of fun.
And that's where the students sit, right?
Yep. That's the student section now. From there kind of got to do lots of other cool projects, raising large scholarship endowments and, different construction projects and whatnot. It was fun because I was an alum, so I cared so much about the place, still do. And now I'm getting to help it really advance forward, which was so fulfilling to me. And I think that, when I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, the reason that philanthropy fit for me was it's always been important to me that it can't just be a job, right? It has to be something where at the end of the day, at the end of my career, I'm going to be able to look back and said, hey, I helped the world move forward in some way, probably a small way, but I helped it move forward somehow. It's something that I could be proud of. And this really does serve that need for me.
Well, in a big way, like scholarships alone, like that's changing someone's life, right? Like you're changing someone's life by helping them get a scholarship because you're helping raise the money for them to be able to go to that institution.
Yep, that's absolutely right. It's you can look at those scholarship endowments that I helped to create, and you can see, okay, that was 15 years ago now. How many students have benefited from that, right?
Yeah.
And had their lives changed because of that donor's generosity. That's pretty cool.
That's huge. And then what are they doing with their life, now because of that experience? So you talk about the progression of your career every 2 years. You subtly said it, very humble, but that you were getting promoted. What was that experience like now looking back, like getting promoted, the people that were there? And then I'm assuming with those promotions, it meant you now having team members under you.
Yeah. So, over time I did take on some leadership responsibilities. And, when I left MSU, I was actually leading the plan giving office, which was really fun for me, that type of work, because it matched kind of the creative data side of my mind with the people side of my brain. Kind of got to do those two things together. So plan giving is kind of how do we do something complex, whether it's help somebody give a piece of real estate or help somebody set up a trust to make their gift. And so kind of getting to be technical with it. And that was, I really enjoyed that. And with that, then I got to take on some leadership responsibilities with some team members, and that became a whole nother very fulfilling, opportunity in life when you start to get to explore, okay, so far in my life, I've just led myself. Now I'm getting to lead other people, and that has some tremendous opportunity, but also some responsibility. And that's been a lot of fun.
What were some lessons while you were MSU that you learned with that transition of now management of staff and it's leadership, but now you manage a team?
Yeah, great question. For me, leadership is always, first of all, it's an ongoing process. I don't think anybody has ever gets perfect at it, right? There's always something different that you need to be doing. And then just when you think you've got it figured out, you get a new member on your team and you have to do something completely different that you've never done before. So I think that was probably the biggest aha moment for me was, how do I be the leader that each person on my team needs, right? Because it's not so much about how do I get them to do what I want them to do. It's how do I remove obstacles for them, empower them, get to know them on a very personal level so I know what motivates them so that we can get the best out of them, whatever that looks like, right? And I think that was, it took a while to get that figured out. And then you realize too that people are people and they have different things going on in their life that you have to be respectful of, and you have to be able to navigate through and around. And, it's a real art and a science to be able to do that.
Yeah. And it's just a transition, right? Like from
doing the work and then doing it and overseeing a team. So you were there, you said, for 10 years. And then what happened after that 10th year?
Well, as I said, I met my wife.
Yeah.
We got married and decided we were going to start having kids. Our first daughter, Miranda, who's now 9, was born in Billings, or was born in Bozeman, excuse me. And my wife decided to stay at home with her, which was a huge blessing for us. And it quickly became evident to me that, for us to be our best, we needed to be closer to a support network.
Yeah.
And so we started looking at Billings, where my wife is from. She's got a mom and a couple of sisters down here. And so we said, you know what, I think for everybody to be really happy and for our family to thrive, we need to be part of that network, a family network. And I was fortunate enough to grow up with that in Wilsell.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to be able to go live out my career in Wilsell. So it's like Billings is probably where we're going to need to go. And so we came down here about 8 years ago. It'll actually be 9 years this summer. And, it's been a wonderful transition for us. And it, from a career standpoint, it's, been fun for me to step outside of my higher ed experience. Now I'm in healthcare, and to be part of something completely different than I'd ever really thought of before.
Yeah. And before you got to St. V, right? That's what St. Vincent Healthcare Foundation, you were at Rocky.
Yes.
Right. My alma mater.
That's right.
Yeah. So when you guys moved, did you have the job, or did you guys move and then you found the job?
Great question. So I actually moved down here. I started in the Billings Clinic Foundation, believe it or not.
Okay.
And I was there for a few months and then was recruited to Rocky. And, Billings Clinic treated me very well. But Rocky was an opportunity. I said, okay, here's a chance to go lead the advancement department, which oversaw fundraising and alumni relations. So it was kind of the next step in my higher ed fundraising journey, and loved Rocky. What a great school. They gave me so many opportunities there to, we were able to successfully kind of grow giving there. I actually got to teach a class for a semester, which was a wonderful experience, a great school. And I think, I'm not sure if Bob Wilmoth will listen to this or not, the president of Rocky, but my advice to him is that place has got to tell its story a lot louder than it does, because I think it really does a great job of transforming students.
It does. And I mean, I'm biased, obviously, because I went there, but I think there's just such a rich history of Rocky that a lot of people don't know. And I think one of the slogans that I love, because it's like a Rocky slogan, but it's Montana's first, Montana's finest. But it's like that first school, and students used to work in there's just so much really cool history with Rocky. And then I think there's some cool alums, just like at MSU too. But there's just cool things that the school does and opportunities that I think could tell the story a little louder.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about this line of work that I've chosen for my life is the legacies of these institutions. And I think that was one of the coolest things about working at Rocky it is Montana's oldest college, right? And I'm not going to get the date right, but the 1880s essentially is when it was founded. It was actually founded over in Deer Lodge. And the origin story was always fascinating to me. Basically, these ranchers got together in one of their living rooms one day and said, if we're going to have any future at all, we need higher education for our kids, right? They can't get it unless we stick them on a boat and send them back east, right? So we're going to have to do something here in Montana. So they got together, they all ponied up money. They started the very first iteration of Rocky Mountain College. And then, through some mergers and other things, then it moved down to Billings and, joined Polytechnic, and the rest is history. But I always am just so both humbled and amazed by those stories, those origin stories, because St. V's kind of has a similar, St. Vincent has a very similar origin story of basically it's brave people said, you know what, if we're going to have a future, we got to do something about it. And they step up and they do it.
And it was during I feel like it's not really that long ago. If we think about it, like the 1800s, early 1900s, that wasn't that long ago, but they were there's nothing out here yet. Out west. I mean, kind of, but not. They just had to be the ones to build it.
Right. Yeah, there really wasn't a lot of infrastructure out here. It was still very wild country and still being discovered. And then you layer that on the fact that, at that point, the Civil War is only 15, 20 years old, and so, or past us. And so the country didn't even really get along at that point.
No.
It sounds familiar sometimes, but yet here you have these brave people that step up and say, we're going to do something. Yep. And those institutions are still around 150, 125 years later.
And I think MSUB is celebrating 100 years in 2027, I believe. I think 100 years.
Yeah.
They have a big milestone that's coming up too. So, and Rocky did a lot of things while you were there.
Yep.
Leading the development.
Yeah. I think we celebrated the 145th anniversary while I was there, or 130th. We just celebrated 125 at St. P's. So I'm trying to remember the dates of all of these organizations. But yeah, and you think about it, that's a long time, right?
Yep.
And
the new science center was even just like the fencing, which I come from that back. So I'm like, I appreciate the new like fencing around. And I tell Bob every time I see him, I'm like, the fencing looks great. But the signage, it just really, I think with the new science center on Poly, it's stunning. That building's and I think sometimes people forget Rocky's here.
I think you're right.
Because it's like hidden. It's like this cute, quaint campus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful campus. I think that's one of the things.
But now with the new signs, you see it.
Yes, you know right where it's at.
Yeah.
Again, it's a very humble organization. And so it's been neat to see the sign develop and as you mentioned, the all the fencing around campus. And then the grounds crew does such a great job of taking care of it. If you haven't done it yet, a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning and go walk around that campus. It's a wonderful experience.
It is fun. So when did you transition from Rocky over to where you are now? And what kind of led that? Were you poached a little or, what does that look like?
I was. Again, I go back to that kind of my mantra has always been, hey, if an opportunity presents itself and you
might as well listen.
Don't have a reason to say no, you should think about it. And so that's kind of what happened here is, St. Vincent Foundation kind of approached me and said, hey, would you ever be interested? And then I found out about their plans to build a new hospital, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I thought, man, an opportunity to do something like that, to be part of a project that'll be around for 100 plus years. That's the goal when you're in this line of work, right? Is to be part of something that'll change the community in that kind of way. And so I said, yep, I'd be willing to listen to the conversation. And one thing led to another, and I'll be celebrating 4 years here this summer and at St. Vincent. And it's been a remarkable experience and something that I know I'm going to look back on and say that was the key moment for me.
So tell us a little bit, you hinted at it, but what have been some of those projects over the past 4 years? And then we can get into the exciting new news. Well,
we've done some pretty cool stuff over the last 4 years. So we expanded our pediatric specialty clinic through some donor generosity. That's something that's truly remarkable. When you've got a sick child or a child that is injured, for many, many years, those kids would have to be flown to Denver or to Salt Lake City, to receive the kind of care that they need. But our goal has been, how do we every year keep more and more kids close to Billings, right, for their care? Because we know a couple of things. Number one, that if their care is local, they get to stay close to their family. And that family network is so important to, a kid to be able to heal, not just the kid themselves, but just the family dynamic. But also it's a financial burden, right? If you have to have a kid shipped out of state and you've got travel costs and you've got parents who won't need to get hotels for a few weeks, that can be very disruptive to a family. So expanding that specialty clinic so that we can get more physicians in there to see more kids all the time has really, it's been something pretty remarkable to be part of that. And then also, we're getting ready to expand our diabetes clinic, thanks to some donor generosity. And we've done some other stuff, the advancement to level 1 trauma. We had to raise funds to be able to make that leap. And so, it's helping the community take steps forward, right? In this case with healthcare. And I think for me, that never gets old. Right? To think of what can we do next to better serve this community.
And the region. I mean, we both come from small towns, but like for us, if there's something big or small, you're coming to Billings to go see someone at the hospital.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, same story. And I remember, so my mom actually was a nurse at St. Vincent when I was really young. And then they moved us to the ranch when I think I was 4 or 5 years old. But she maintained those doctor relationships. So we would come down here for any medical thing that we needed done. And I just remember some of those terrible roads in the winter and, the long trips. And we would, of course, go to Costco and load up on school supplies and do all of that stuff whenever you come to the big city. And, today that story is still true. Like you go through our parking lot, and I tell people this all the time, take a look around and see how many 3 license plates you see, 3 representing Yellowstone County and Billings. it's the minority, right? Most of them are from small towns that they're driving in, and they're maybe even having to spend a night here to see their medical provider. So we serve such a huge area, really 4 states and over 400,000 people population-wise. Which
is huge. And I think, too, just even the level 1 trauma is huge to be able to, because, again, like when you're in more rural communities, they can't, that critical care you can't access in those small towns. So they're getting life flighted. Like I could name off family, friends, and even kids that have been life flighted to Billings which is so amazing that they can then just land and stay in Billings, like you said, because they have family here and where they can stay, and they're not having to go to Denver, to Salt Lake to get that great care. They can just get it here in Billings.
Well, and in most of those situations, time is the most important factor they've got going, right? They need to be seen quickly. So if you're having to be flown to Billings and then taking another flight to Salt Lake City, that can,
time's critical,
have some problems associated with it. So, having that level 1 trauma designation, it's not just a stamp, right? We've had to invest lots of resources to get to that point so we can say that if the worst of the worst happens, we can take care of you here at St. Vincent. And that's been a big lift for our organization, but also a point of pride for us, right? It's been something that the team's worked very hard on across the hospital to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think the community really benefits from that.
Oh, yeah. The region benefits from the great healthcare we have here, which Steve talks about all the time, too, which is great. So talk a little bit about the relationship between, just for those maybe unfamiliar, between a foundation like that you run as the executive director and the hospital. Like, what are those touch points? Are they different entities? Just for someone that's maybe like, oh, I didn't really realize that.
A lot of people ask, well, why do you even need to fundraise, right? Because they see their medical bills. They know how expensive healthcare is. And, the reason we have to fundraise is because a hospital, yes, it's expensive to get medical care, but it's also very expensive to deliver that care. And so when you look at the financial statements of a hospital, you'll see that almost every single dollar that we bring in, we spend, right? To pay physicians, to pay for very expensive equipment and technology and all of those things. So in order for us to take steps forward in transforming that care, donors have to be a part of that, right? And that's really where we get to step in from the foundation and say, who are those folks out there in the community, in the state, in the region that really care about healthcare, have the means to do something about that? How do we align that passion with what the hospital needs to take that step forward and deliver better care to the community and to the region? And that's really what the foundation does, right? We have a team that's dedicated to that, telling that story, building those relationships, and ultimately turning those into wonderful things that help bring better healthcare to our home.
And you guys, I want you to talk to a little bit about some of the events and things that you host for donors and to raise money through the foundation, because you guys have some cool things that your team does.
Yeah, we do some great things. So, our bread and butter really is just in the one-on-one personal relationships and building those and aligning those passions with the vision of where we're going as a healthcare organization. But we also do some really fun stuff. We put on 3 golf tournaments, throughout the month of June.
And Heather's attention to detail, ladies, like because I volunteered to drive, I don't golf, but the golf cart driving, she has like this tub of ice water. So when it's hot during the tournament, and she'll put essential oils in it and then puts towels for women to put on their necks. And I'm like, the detail. So good.
I know.
Anyways, you guys have golf tournaments.
Yeah. And they're so much fun because the team does such a great job of paying attention to those little details and making it an experience, right? So that we can have a fun time while doing something important for the community. So we do those tournaments. So we honor Mary Nell Herringer, who the Herringer family, longtime wonderful family in this community. She was a major golfer. So we honor her. We have the Fortin Memorial Men's Tournament, which we honor Philip Fortin with that tournament. And then our newest one that we launched 4 years ago is the Randy Scott Memorial. Of course, Randy Scott of the First Interstate Bank Scott family left us way too young, but he was a big champion of our organization and of healthcare and of so many things in this community. And it's been fun to kind of, be part of his legacy and have an opportunity to remember him every year through this tournament. So we do that one. Our big one, though, which I know you've been to often, is our Saints Ball. Which
so fun.
Is so much fun, yes. And that's every year, the first Saturday in October. We typically, raise around $1 million for the hospital at that event.
Which is a lot in one night.
And it's so important to the work that we're doing. But it's also a great opportunity to get the community together to celebrate the wonderful miracles that are happening every day at St. Vincent. So that one's a lot of fun for us. The next one, though, on our docket is our Call for Kids on April 9th. So we, try to raise 100,000, 150,000 for our pediatric programs at St. Vincent.
And I love that one. I've helped, or I volunteered a few times over the years. I think I'm out of town this year for that. I'll have to check. But anyways, I think that one's so fun too. Do you want to talk a little? I volunteered and I've enjoyed as a volunteer helping with that one. It's really fun. But do you want to talk a little bit about what that one is?
Yeah. So we do a partnership every year with KCTR, Cat Country here in Billings, and the Morning Flakes, or the Breakfast Flakes show. And we raise money for pediatrics, and all of the different programs that we have going on up at St. Vincent. And so, we have some donors who will step forward and say, I'm going to match every donation, during a certain hour, things like that. We have great sponsors that jump on board to help out with that. And then people call in. It used to be call in. Now it's more they'll hop online and make their gift. But, it's fun because it's really high paced and we're kind of keeping track of the goal all throughout the day and the progress to the goal. So it's become a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And I think it is fun now that people can pay online. I think the calls are still fun and you get some of those that are still calling, which is fun to get those calls. But then now with just younger generations wanting to donate, I think the online access is super easy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We do still have the people that call in. The nice thing is though, it's not that high volume so that you have to get the gift quickly, hang up because the other phone's ringing. And usually if a person takes the time to call in, it's because they have a story to tell. And let me tell you, some of those are inspirational, heart-wrenching, motivating stories. You hear of families that, their kid was close to dying and the team at St. V's was able to treat them and get them back to where they needed to be. Some of those stories are pretty incredible. And let me tell you, I'll cry a couple times a day during our Call for Kids because you hear those stories.
Oh, yeah. And and you just know people that have maybe been through some of those experiences too, so it touches close to home. We've talked about it a little bit, but you guys have some big stuff happening up over on the hill, kind of like on the hill. I'll call it on the hill. It's not on the hill, but what are you guys? What are you doing?
Well, I think it's probably the best, worst kept secret in Billings, right?
I think people know, but
yeah, it's not a secret anymore. We, thanks to the partnership with Big Sky Economic, really, kind of revealed the plans to the community back in November. But excited that we're going to this summer begin construction on a brand new hospital to replace the old St. Vincent Hospital. So, we've been around for 126 years now. The oldest part of our current hospital structure is over 100 years old.
Wow.
And over the years, the team has done a remarkable job of adding on, renovating, keeping things up to date. It's a beautiful facility, been well maintained, but as Lee, our chief executive officer, likes to say often, hard to practice 21st century medicine in a 20th century facility. And so we've made that discernment, looked at, okay, how much would it cost to just bring our current facility up to where we need it to be versus build a new one? And it made much more sense to build a new building, which, people probably don't track the healthcare industry quite like I do, but people don't do that. You don't see a lot of brand new hospitals built across the country. Most of them are done, a building or a wing at a time. To build a brand new hospital is pretty unprecedented, and we're excited to be doing that. We're told that it'll be the largest construction project ever to take place in the state of Montana.
Which is huge.
Which is daunting and exciting all at the same time.
And to be part of something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, legacy, just a huge moment for Billings, but also the state of Montana to be doing something and making the investment that Intermountain Health is making.
Absolutely. Because this is a facility that'll be around for 100 years, right? And you look at the current St. Vincent Hospital, I mean, right now we're averaging between 1,800 and 2,000 births a year over the last 10 years. And so
That's a lot.
If you extrapolate that ahead, for the next 100 years and factor in the way this community is growing and the way we're growing, that's 250,000 to 300,000 children that'll be born in this facility. When you start to put it on terms like that, that's, it's very kind of cool to think about.
Impactful. I was born in that hospital.
So was I.
So was my brother. Yeah.
And that's the cool thing. I think that I love most about what we get to do is healthcare is a very sacred thing. And I tell my team this, I said, one of the most important things we can do when we're walking those halls is to just be present, because people are either having the worst day of their life or the best day of their life. There's not a lot of in between. right? Because
Especially on that main campus.
there are some very challenging things that happen to people, and that's why they're in a hospital. Or there's some exciting things like the birth of a baby, or hey, we just beat cancer, or something like that. So those are such sacred moments that people are going through, and we can never ever forget that.
Just lots of memories too.
Yep.
But I think like the having a baby and things
Yep.
like that you remember, even though, I mean, like I'm like, oh, I was born there, but I don't remember that.
No,
You know?
but you probably visited people when they've had their baby in there.
Yeah, and I've heard my story so many times from my mom and aunt. I feel like it gets brought up every family dinner that we have together when my parents are in town. So yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things that we do, and I know lots of hospitals do this, but whenever a baby's born, you'll hear a nursery chime kind of go over the loudspeaker across the whole hospital.
Cool.
And I think that part's cool, but what's even more cool is how people stop whatever they're doing, you know, just kind of almost subconsciously, and stop whatever they're doing and listen. And you can watch people in the smiles that go on people's faces,
Like,
you know,
oh, little baby was just
a
born.
new life just came into
Or maybe
the world.
2.
Yep. We had 2 sets of triplets last year.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, it's,
Whoa.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of humbling, you know, that so much wonderful stuff's going on every single day.
Yeah. And so as we look into 2025, have you guys set a theme? I know usually you're raising for like peds or diabetics or whatever that is for Saints, which is your fall event. Have you set that for this year yet?
Yes, we have, as a matter of fact. And
Ooh,
so,
can we know?
yes.
Okay.
Well, the big reveal right here.
Great.
We're going to support our cancer services
Wow,
this year.
great.
You know, if you go out to our cancer center on the west end of town, you know, where a lot of the infusion treatment, radiation treatment, where all of that takes place.
Is that the new one or the other one?
It's the one, you know, right there by Zimmerman
Oh,
Trail,
yep.
corner Zimmerman and Grand Avenue. It's, the place is bursting at the seams with patients, which is, you know, we love to be busy, but at the same time, it says a lot about where cancer's at in our community, right? And the need that is there. And so there's a big need for us to continue to invest in making sure we have the best technology, we have the best facilities, we have the best, you know, tools for our caregivers to make sure they're staying at the very top of their licensure in what they're able to provide for their patients. So that's what we're focusing on this year, is how do we make a donor infusion into that work. You know, it's in great shape.
Cool.
You know, we've got lots of great things happening, but always have to continue to advance and make sure that we're there for this community.
And invest in
Yep.
where it's obviously a need.
Yep. It's a great cause. And I think that's the other thing too. I mean, we talk about births and how exciting that is, but every family's been touched by cancer, right? You don't have to think very long to find a family member or a close friend that's been touched by that. And so the beautiful thing about cancer is that we're getting so much better at it every single day as a healthcare industry. You know, people are living longer. They're having better outcomes. It's becoming less and less, you know, difficult for their lives to handle cancer treatment. And so I think we just have to continue on that, right? We have to continue on that journey, and eventually it'll be, you know, not a big deal anymore.
Hopefully.
That's the goal.
That's the goal, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that we can focus on other things
That's right.
in our healthcare world. Well, Tyler, thanks for coming on. It's been so great getting to hear your story and sharing it with our audience. We like to end each of our episodes, as you know, if you listen, with a few rapid fire questions. So we'll just hear a quick message from a sponsor and come back to those questions.
All right.
Big thanks to the Small Business Development Center for sponsoring The Vault at 201 North Broadway. The SBDC is an incredible resource for small business owners, offering free one-on-one counseling, business plan support, market research, financial projections, and much more. Whether you're just starting out or looking to grow, they're here to help your business succeed. Reach out to us at bigsky.economicdevelopment.org.
I have 3 questions for you. What's some of the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received. Actually, I'm going to say pretty recently, I got a book recommendation from a coworker, a book called Radical Candor. You know, I'm a real nice guy, and sometimes I have to push myself a little bit to say what's really on my mind about things. And that book has been wonderful advice about how really, if we're not showing that we care about people enough to tell them what we really think in a situation, we don't really care that much, right? And so that's been great advice for me. And I think it's helped me become a better communicator, probably a better person, right? Because it's, you know, you can have much more solid relationships when you're on that kind of terms.
I like that. What gets you going in the morning, and how do you start your day?
Oh, great question. I actually love to tinker with my morning routine. I kind of change it all the time.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I'm one of those people that I do the same thing every day, but
it's good to change it up.
I'm trying to get that way. So, I really try to, number one, I'm a big coffee guy, so I got to get my coffee pretty quickly. I try to work out first thing in the morning. But lately I've been experimenting with trying to get 15, 20 minutes of reading first thing in the morning as well, to just kind of get my mind fired up for the rest of the day. So that's what I try to do.
I really like that. So as a community leader, for maybe our younger listeners, young leaders, what advice do you have for them as they're starting out and just really getting going in their career?
I would say there's really two things that a person can do to launch their career at a steep trajectory, so you can just keep going. And that is, number one, make time to network, right? All of my jobs and all of my career changes have come because of relationships that I have, right? I feel very fortunate, very blessed that I really haven't had to go out and search for jobs, right? Because the next one has just kind of found me. And so I think that networking and making sure you're well connected with people, and not just doing it at a surface level, but really build relationships, because you never know when you're going to need to reach back to somebody and say, I need your help with something. And so that's number one. Number two is kind of what I've talked about a little bit already, which is be on the lookout for your opportunities, because they come, right? And I'm a big believer, I work at a Catholic hospital. My faith is very important to me. I think there's someone out there looking out for us, right? And an opportunity is going to get placed in front of you right when you need it. So just make sure you don't trip over them, that you're actually looking for them and ready for them.
Yeah, I really like that. And thank you for sharing. And thanks for being on. If someone wants to get connected with the foundation or with the hospital, social accounts, websites, where can they find Intermountain?
Absolutely. So just Google Intermountain Health and all of that will pop up. If you're looking for the St. Vincent Foundation, it's svfoundation.org. And of course, we're on all of the social media sites as well. So look forward to being in contact with folks.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Make sure you are subscribed to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, wherever you podcast, including YouTube.
Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway and Instagram at The Vault_201.
Don't forget to visit us at thevault at 201.com and subscribe to our newsletter.
We will see you next time.
Bye.